Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman, the facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call, particularly those of you calling in for the first time and those that will be listening to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. It's going to be a little bit shorter call today. For our newer callers, I would strongly suggest after listening to this call, you go to our call of May 25th. That was a full call which got into detail with regard to the turnkey program we put in place to assist you and provides all the information you need should you wish to get our initial no obligation package and look at the program we put in place. I am going to touch a little bit on some of the post-RV activities today because if things are moving or continue to move in the direction they're moving right now, we might finally be in a situation where we need to pay much closer attention to some of the post-RV issues. So let's just go ahead and get right into the discussion for this afternoon. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Iraq. The next thing on the agenda, of course, is the establishment of the new government. There are two schools of thought. One is that it's simply not possible to change the exchange rate of the Iraqi Dinar against the U.S. dollar until the new government is formed. The other school of thought is that since the CBI operates independently, since the Iraqi government has operated in the past with a caretaker government, since the individuals running the caretaker government are individuals that are generally approved of in the country, and since they've already accomplished a lot, like passage of the Emergency Food Security Law, if the Parliament is unable to form a new government, the caretaker government can proceed up to and including in conjunction with the CBI change in the exchange rate. So the next 7 to 10 days could be very interesting. One of the issues also against, or at least those that think that the change in the exchange rate is not possible right now, make some valid arguments. One is the money supply argument, which I think we've pretty much debunked. The other issue is that the Iraqi government has sufficient reserve currencies to function absent the exchange of their currency. Well, that's, in my opinion, true, but it's only a half-truth because there are a lot of things that Iraq wants to proceed with, and particularly the caretaker government, these people are not resting on their laurels. They want to see things done. So, for example, there are international contracts to rebuild their infrastructure, their electrical grid, and the like. There are not sufficient reserve currency funds to pay for all of that and to run the government. In addition, in order to proceed with the diversification of revenues and growing their economy, they're going to need to grow the industrial sector, agricultural sector, then there's imports and exports, and even tourism. And once again, these things are going to be extremely difficult, if not impossible, without their own currency. Now, one of the issues with regard to forming the new government is the selection of the prime minister. Again, right now we have the caretaker government, Kazemi, Salih, and Al-Habussi. I'm perfectly happy with these guys. To be honest with you, I'd like to see them remain. But let's talk about the potential candidates. One is, of course, Al-Kazemi. The other is Al-Sudani. He is a member of the coalition framework, but he is a moderate Shia, and he is universally well-liked. So he's a possibility as well. And the third, of course, is Nouri al-Maliki. He just refuses to go away, but I think his days are going to be numbered. As a matter of fact, there's supposed to be a meeting today between the Parliament and Sadr Mohammed, who is the Minister of Justice, And there are several subjects on the dais. One is the constitutionality of the caretaker government. They want to have a conversation about just how far the government can go. In my view, that's positive because the mere fact that they're even discussing a possibility means that they may be in a situation where they're going to be operating for the rest of this year with a caretaker government. And the other issue has to do with the alleged crimes of Maliki. Sadr has finally stated unequivocally that there can be no reconciliation with Maliki until he faces the court with regard to his alleged crimes. So Maliki now is between a rock and a hard place. I expect him to disappear, leaving Soudani and Kazemi as the potential prime minister, either one of them, with the possible exception of a third, a body. But any of those would be certainly infinitely preferable to Maliki. But in all three cases, and in my opinion, Kazemi, the most of the three, are going to move things forward. Now, let's talk a little bit about what's going on international. The IMF is, at this point, pushing Iraq to reinstate their currency. This is for a number of reasons. First, the reinstatement means that the Iraqi dinar will then depeg from the U.S. dollar and be repegged with the IMF basket of currencies. What we are witnessing globally is the U.S. dollar really no longer being the primary global reserve currency. Another issue is that membership in the ISO 2022 deadline is November of this year. Now, what is the ISO 2022? It's part of the SWIFT payment system. In other words, the IMF and even the Bank of International Settlements, the BIS, are anxious to get Iraq within the IMF basket of currencies because they fear that Iraq, that is developing relationships with China, might move out of the SWIFT system and move to the Chinese system, and therefore that wealth would move to the east. So they're pushing as well for this to get done. So this is all moving for us in the right direction. Now, the ISO 2022, again, is part of the SWIFT system. It does have enhanced services, and it has created a common lexicon for cross-border payments, which, of course, is under the purview of the Bank of International Settlements. So for all of these reasons, both internally in Iraq and internationally or globally, the East and the West are sort of competing with one another to bring Iraq into their purview. And, of course, one of the reasons for this is their geopolitical location, the incredible wealth. I've gone into it in detail in the past, but in my opinion, Iraq may be per square mile the richest country in the world with regard to natural resources. And the fact that we're moving globally from the about to be defunct fiat currency to Basel III compliant commodity-backed currencies makes Iraq really a jewel that both the East and the West are seeking to control. So this is good news for us because, again, it pushes everything toward the reinstatement. Now, it could theoretically come before August 1st if you listen to some people. I don't see a revaluation then, but I see the possibility of a reinstatement in country about 5 seconds, either after the new government is formed or there's a meeting of the minds that inasmuch as a new government was not formed, they are going to relent and allow the caretaker government to govern, as the Supreme Judicial Council said, to do whatever is necessary rather than saying whatever is necessary within the constraints of the Constitution. So this is good news. And this is yet another reason for those of you that have not gotten your affairs in order or may not understand what that involves to go to our call of May 25th to understand better what I'm referring to. Now, I do want to touch on this a little bit. I've spent literally over a decade presenting our trust package to Dinarians and explaining to them the need for establishing their trust package prior to the revaluation of the dinar and some of these other currencies. And that's still the case more than ever. However, given the high tax surveillance state we now live in, and given the fact that the U.S. dollar is losing its weight globally, given the fact that Russia and China are now creating a gold-backed global reserve currency to compete with the U.S. dollar, given the fact that we have now the creation or actually reinstitution of BRICS nations that will be utilizing their own currencies amongst those nations, and given the fact that the Western central banks are pushing hard for a global digital currency, it's important that you establish this trust whether you have currencies or not. But for those that do have currencies, or those that will acquire a substantial amount of wealth from other assets, the only way, again, given the high tax state and surveillance state being created by the United States and the EU, the only way to protect your privacy, to protect your wealth, is through the establishment of a family asset protection trust package. Post-RV, you need to seriously consider a variety of offshore options as well. So, for example, by establishing our trust package, and let's say you are holding currencies, by transferring the currencies to the trust prior to their revaluation, you're going to hide the fact that you have acquired this wealth. You're going to be able to protect that wealth from civil litigation. There are going to be certain tax advantages that you can only enjoy because the assets are in trust. But after the revaluation, after you've acquired this wealth, then you're confronted with other issues. For example, high taxes, the creation of the digital currency. So you might, in addition to this trust, want to consider some offshore options, which of course Trusts Unlimited is involved in as well. So you would utilize your trust domestically to hold assets domestically in country, but then you would create other offshore entities to hold title to certain assets. You would also utilize it if you, for example, wanted to hold other currencies other than the U.S. dollar, particularly other currencies that are substantially backed or currencies that are not following the Western Central Bank digital system. In a really strange situation where things really go south for us in this country, you might even have to consider having a portion of your currency out of the SWIFT system. Now, that would have been an heretical statement 10 years ago. But given the scenario right now, it is at least a possibility that you need to prepare for. So in summary, just let me say that it looks like the last remaining domino to fall is the creation of a new government in Iraq. If the new government is not formed, it seems there is precedent for the caretaker government to proceed, even with regard to the exchange change in the exchange rate, in as much as the CBI has virtually unilateral ability there. Add the fact that the IMF and the Bank of International Settlements is anxious for Iraq to reinstitute their currency, given the fact that despite the fact that they have substantial reserve currency, it's simply not going to be enough to run their government and do all of the other things that they want to get accomplished. So hopefully we're going to see the reinstitution of the currency in country very shortly. And those of you that have not gotten your affairs in order or may not understand what that involves, I strongly suggest you contact us to get our initial no-obligation trust package. The package does contain everything you need should you make the determination to establish your family asset protection trust. But again, you are absolutely under no obligation to do so. The package has a lot of information about us, about the trusts, about the revaluation process, about the protections that are provided both pre and post-RV. If you have any questions, you can contact us by phone or email. We'll be happy to assist you. There will be no consultation fee. You can go directly to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. I suggest you contact us by email in order to get our package, the updated package. That is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com. Or you can phone us, give us your email address, and request the package. Our number is 307-274-4122. Hopefully, this long ride is about to come to an end. The ISO 2022 in November could very well be a drop-dead date, and that's not that far off. Our next call, of course, will be next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great week. And again, please contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. We'd love to send it out to you. Bye-bye.